Hello everybody, my name is Gabriel Balderas. I'm the chef owner of El Cabo Verde, and I want to briefly talk about our concept. Our Mexican restaurant, we source our ingredients locally, as much as we can from local suppliers. We also believe in wholesome food, which we make everything here from scratch. The things that beautiful vegetables, quality ingredients that are used to make our dishes day in and day out, as well as a service. We like to promote excellent service, hospitality, and the delicious meals for each and every one of our guests. To tell you briefly about my story, I grew up in Mexico around food, around mom and grandmother cooking. My passion for food became just a normal thing. We celebrate, we sit around the table, we cook, and that was my upbringing. So we try to replicate that here at the restaurant as much as we can. So today we're going to prepare for you a fresh guacamole, which is one of the staples for Mexican cuisine anywhere in the world. So we say, why not? Why not we make a guacamole, fresh guacamole for you guys? I want to make sure that we go through the ingredients first. To make a really nice guacamole, we have to make sure we find the right avocados. We have cilantro, limes, red onions, and we also will use a little bit of salt. My take on guacamole is the less ingredients, the better off. So we're gonna start off with our avocados. For our recipe today, we're probably gonna do 3 avocados, 1 lime, and we're gonna chop up a little bit of cilantro. So we're gonna get started. We're gonna start off first. We have our ingredients now. We're also gonna talk about what we're gonna need, the utensils that are needed. So we need a mixing bowl. We need a old-fashioned lime squeezer, because we wanna, not only we wanna get the juice of the lime, but we also wanna get the oil of the zest. We're gonna get started with the guacamole. So we're gonna go grab our mixing bowl. We're going to come back on the top. You have to be careful with your fingers. We're gonna go with the avocado all the way around until we find the other edge, and then we wanna open it up. We twist it to open it up. We're gonna go do that with the next avocado. We wanna make sure the avocados are nice and green and ripe. We have beautiful avocados. We take the pit. You use the end of your knife. So the end of our knife we stab the pit, and we're going to scoop it out with our spoon. We're scooping out all of it. We want to make sure there's nothing left in the peel. We're going to do the same thing with each one of these avocados. It's important for us to remember that every avocado has a little pit in here on the very top. We have to remove that before we cut it up open. So we're scooping out all the guacamole, all the goodies. We're gonna go ahead and place these in a little container so we get it out of our way, out of sight. As we do this, we need to make sure that we can go ahead and apply our citrus, because avocados, everybody knows, it starts oxidizing, it starts browning. So you have to, I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze my lime. We're kind of pushing it up a little bit, but if your lime is a little too hard, sometimes you can roll your hand over, kind of soften it up a little bit. Some people can microwave. You stick it in the microwave for a minute or so, and it softens up and it pops the pulp. so you get more juice out of your lime. So we're gonna go ahead and squeeze this one there. We don't want our avocado to brown, so I'm sort of adding it to make sure that our guacamole turns bright green once we get done with the recipe. And however, I'm gonna have to come back. We're gonna come back and add more at the end just to season it for flavor, to make sure that that's the flavor we're looking for. The next step is, we got avocado. I got some cilantro, fresh cilantro here. We believe that the most flavor is actually on the stem of the cilantro than the leaves. So when we make our guacamole, we use everything. We cut it in half. We turn it like this. So we use the leaves and the stalk of the cilantro. So we're gonna start chopping. We wanna make sure that we're only doing one, so our cilantro is fresh and no chopped too fine where the flavor is gone. So we wanna make sure we keep a little bit of that flavor. And we wanna do as much for three avocados, we wanna do as much as maybe an ounce, 2 ounces will be fine. The stem has a lot more flavor than the leaf actually, for this particular recipe. So onion, we want to make sure we use the red onion. We believe that red onion has the best flavor for the guacamole. We cut up the ends. And once we cut up the ends, we're going to go ahead and cut it up in half. And then we peel. We want to make sure that when we do this, your onion is nice and firm. It allows us to have a crunchiness into our guacamole when we do this. This recipe is a very simple recipe, but ingredients are very important. We're looking for a fine dice, a very, very small dice. So when we incorporate it into our guacamole, you're not able to see it, but you're able to taste the crunchiness and the flavor. And it's important to only do one slice. The less chopping you do on it, the better off. So you don't release the substance in the onion and then it becomes tart. We have to come back and slice and then come back and slice again, sideways. And then we're going to come back and start chopping. So as you can see, we're getting very fine pieces of onion, and that's what we're looking for. We're doing this. Okay, I think we believe that about 2 ounces will be enough onion for this. So we have our onion ready. We're going to put this little piece aside. We used everything. We don't want to waste. We don't want to waste any of this. So you can do the whisk, a small whisk. You can do a spoon, or you can do a potato masher, which I don't have one here. But for this case that we're doing this, we're using a whisk, a small one. You want your avocado to be chunky, so we don't want it to be puree. We want it to be chunky, so when you're taking bites of this, you have a chunkier texture in your mouth as well. So as you can see, the lime in there, sitting in there, breaking down your avocado. When we added the lime allows the avocado to break down easier. So now we have a chunkier texture. So we're gonna go ahead and add cilantro, onion. And as we add in the cilantro and the onion, we're actually gonna fold the ingredients. We're gonna use a spatula as well, or a spoon. So now that I have my avocado already mashed up, I have my cilantro and my onions, I'm going to start folding. And we're folding so we don't continue to mash up the avocado. We're folding the ingredients so our avocado is still chunky. It keeps the chunkiness. Now we got cilantro, onion. I can see the onion in there, I can see cilantro. All we need is a little salt. You want to do this salt last because our vegetables, our onion, cilantro, and avocado has its own sodium. So we want to wait for the salt last. So we have the ability to, once we mix it in, we taste it, we can always adjust our seasoning. We can try it. I think I'm ready for trying this. We're gonna go ahead and try it. See where we at on the spices. It's delicious, amazing. I'm gonna go back and add a little more lime. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little more lime. We take our nice old-fashioned juicer and add a little lime on the top, and I think we're ready to go. We have the taste we're looking for. The seasoning is perfect. We're gonna mix in our lime juice a little more, and then we're gonna go ahead and plate it. So we have a little bowl here that we got for plating. The way we like to serve our guacamole is we wanna make sure we make a little mount in the middle for presentation. And we mount it high on top of each other. So we know that the guacamole at some point is going to settle. We got all of it. And we're going to go ahead and garnish it with a nice cilantro spring. And then we're going to put some chips here, the freshly fried corn chips that we make. We'll go ahead and add the last one in there. Because this avocado will probably last, a good 30, 40 minutes before it starts getting brown, starts getting oxidized. You could refrigerate it. I suggest to put it in a container really sealed tight so you won't have any oxygen touching the avocado. If any of the surface touches oxygen, you start having oxidation, which is browning. The taste may be fine, but the color is going to be off. One thing I want to point out with the avocado, for us to be able to choose an avocado, I normally like to feel the avocado. If you feel it and it feels firm, but you can kind of still push in your fingertips in it, that's what you're looking for. You want an avocado that's firm, but when you're pressing on it, your fingerprints are making an indentation on the outside of the avocado. Also, it's very important to know that every avocado has this tiny little pit, or tiny little the part that keeps the avocado attaching to the tree. So you have to take this off, and then you cut open. If you leave that on, it's likely to end up in your guacamole. I suggest if you're buying your avocado and it's already too soft, put it in the fridge. If it's green, leave it outside on your counter, in the kitchen counter. Avocado tastes better when you bring it to room temperature. So my suggestion to you, if you're gonna make the avocado, sit it on your counter the morning of the day you're making it off, so it can be room temperature, so it can be tastier. Because you have to think about it, avocado it's mostly fat. Fat doesn't do well cold. Fat does well room temperature. So it brings out the flavor. It brings out the texture when it's room temperature. The way I judge an avocado is I feel the middle of the avocado, and if I can push in my fingertips in it, and it starts making indentions on the outside, that means that it's firm enough, but it's not too mushy. You want an avocado, I'd rather have a firm avocado than a mushy one. We here at the restaurant, people love our guacamole, so this is our version of our guacamole, our take on the guacamole. Most places do a lot of tomatoes, different ingredients we don't. Our guacamole is very simple. The avocado, cilantro, onions, salt, and a little lime juice. And we're known for our guacamole here at the restaurant because we make it from fresh ingredients. We make it daily, fresh for our customers. And I hope you enjoy this recipe. I hope you have lots of questions for us, and we'd like for you to try to make this recipe at home, and I hope you have lots of questions for us. Thank you for having us.
Bonjour, my name is Damian Chapman, 5th generation chef and owner here at Orlando's Cafe in Shreveport, Louisiana, celebrating our 100-year centennial. And today we're here to talk about our famous recipe for our wonderful Creole gumbo that we serve here at Orlando's. This is what we called in Louisiana the Holy Trinity. It consists of onions, bell pepper, and celery. It goes in every single dish that is considered Creole. You're gonna dice your bell peppers in a small dice. We're gonna cut our onions in a brunoise cut. Brunoise is a just small dice, a little smaller than small dice, cutting it into equally small pieces. I think out of all vegetables, celery is my favorite to dice. So crunchy and crispy. Also want to do a small dice with these as well. Every part of the Holy Trinity is very important. Most people say, oh, I don't like celery or I don't like onion, but it all helps to the flavor in the gumbo. And that's our Holy Trinity. Now, depending on who you talk to, okra is a necessity to gumbo. You can't have gumbo without okra. But some say, oh, I don't like it, it's too slimy. But if okra is added at the right time and cooked correctly, it is very, very yummy. Slice it really thin, just for those non-okra eaters can be able to enjoy it. Now, garlic is not just for keeping away vampires, but it's definitely a very essential ingredient in the gumbo. Being that one of our powder ingredients is garlic powder, we won't use as much garlic cloves, but it's definitely needed. I love garlic. I absolutely love garlic. Some people put different things in their gumbo as far as the meats. You've got a seafood gumbo, or some people do chicken and sausage. But here in Orlando's, we put it all in the pot. We've got chicken, shrimp, crab, and sausage, all locally sourced when possible. Here we're using a locally made sausage called Down Home Smoked Sausage out of North Louisiana. We like to dice things up not too small, but relatively small. That way you can kind of get a piece of every meat in every single bite. Here we're using boneless chicken thighs to go in our gumbo. I'm gonna cut that down to a nice chunks. We use chicken thighs as opposed to chicken breast because breasts tend to break down and be really stringy once they boil all the way down, and we wanna have a nice chunky meat in the gumbo. Some people use whole chicken, but it could be a little tough eating gumbo and there's bones all in there as well. So we use a nice thigh. Here we've got Louisiana Gulf shrimp. The count on these are 60-70. We use these instead of a jumbo shrimp so that we won't have to cut them down. These are a little more easy to eat with so that you can get a shrimp in it at least every bite. You ever had gumbo with a whole crab in it and it was hard for you to kind of get it out and break it and eat it? You know what, it would be a whole lot easier if you could just take the claw and just... So this is what we use. We use crab fingers. Makes it a whole lot easier to eat your gumbo. Here in Louisiana, our seasonings are essential. Everyone cooks food, but it's the way that we season our food that makes it great. Now that we've got all our ingredients cut and ready to go into the gumbo, we're gonna add them to the pot. We're gonna fill our pot up about 3/4 full with water. It's debatable if tomatoes go into gumbo, but here we use tomato paste, not tomatoes, but it's definitely necessary. Now we're gonna crank up our heat. This is when we add our seasonings while we wait for our water to boil. garlic, salt. In Creole soul food cooking, we normally don't use a measuring cup. We just pour until our ancestors tell us to stop. Pepper. Chicken base. Cayenne pepper. And we're just gonna stir that in like so. We've got our chicken and our vegetables in there. We'll cover it up to bring it to a boil for about 30-45 minutes, and then we'll go in with our next set of ingredients. Now we're gonna put our lid down and allow our gumbo to come to a boil. Now that we've got our gumbo to a boil, we're gonna add a couple more ingredients. We're gonna go in with our down-home smoked sausage and be very careful so that it doesn't splash you. Go ahead and put it all in there. As well as our Gulf shrimp. We'll put the lid back on and bring the water back to a boil. While we wait for our water to come to a boil, we'll work on our roux. Roux is a mixture of equal parts flour and oil that is used to thicken your gumbo when it's all finished. Whisking as you pour the oil into the skillet. The roux consists of equal parts flour and oil. You whisk it together into the consistency of your liking. It's very important to have a roux because that's what thickens your gumbo. Some people have a blonde roux, which would be just like this. They would heat it up just a little bit slightly, and others prefer a darker roux. The color of the roux affects the end product by the taste as well as the color of the gumbo. I prefer a little darker roux myself. Some people add their gumbo filet while they're eating their gumbo. But for us, we're gonna put our gumbo filet in when it's close to being ready. Did you hear that? The ancestors said stop. Now that we've allowed our roux to cook down to a nice peanut butter thickness, we turn it off and we set it to the side. This is what we'll use to thicken our gumbo when it's ready. All right, that's good. Now we're at our crab fingers. They don't take much to cook at all. Now that all our meat is done in our gumbo, it's time to tighten it down, as we call it, or thicken it up with our roux. We'll pour a little bit in at a time and stir until we reach our desired thickness. Just a little bit more. And we stir that in. You don't want it thin as a soup, but not as thick as an étouffée. Look at that. Gumbo is traditionally served with rice, and most people eat it with crackers, but here in North Louisiana, we eat it with cornbread. And of course, why not order a side of our stuffed shrimp as well? Now that our gumbo is complete, now it's time to bowl it and enjoy. The stuffed shrimp is very unique to Shreveport. It was created in the kitchen of Freeman and Harris Cafe, somewhere around the 50s, but you can't get it nowhere else but in Shreveport. Well, it's a shrimp that is stuffed with a crab meat stuffing with all our Creole seasonings and deep fried to a golden crust. Here at Orlando's Cafe, we're celebrating our centennial, commemorating from 1921. It all started with my great uncle, Van Freeman, who came to work at the Washington Uri Hotel. And then his cousin, Jack Harris, later joined him, and they started a restaurant called Freeman and Harris Cafe. They brought their 3 nephews into the business and taught them everything that they knew. Tody Wallette, Pete Harris, and Arthur Scrap Chapman, which is my great-grandfather. We've gone through a couple name changes throughout the years, and the tradition has become that we name the business after the last owner of the restaurant. Uncle Pete passed away, and my grandfather and his cousins named the restaurant in homage of him, Pete Harris Cafe. My grandfather became a part of the business, Willie Brother Chapman, and when he passed away, my father, Orlando Chapman, named the business after him, Brothers Seafood. In 2013, when my father passed away, me and my younger brothers turned and named the restaurant after him, Orlando's Cafe. Hence the name change from Freeman and Harris to Orlando's. We're still the same exact family with the same great food and the same great recipes to give to our customers. Now y'all come on down to Orlando's, the best cafe on this side of the bayou, where our gumbo is served hot and fresh every single day and not too spicy for our AARP members.
Hey guys, I'm Chef Blake Jackson. I'm the executive chef and owner here at Whisk Dessert Bar in Shreveport, Louisiana. And today, I'm going to show you all how to make a rosemary tart with a beautiful lemon custard. Y'all, we've got a pretty simple ingredient list for this, including lemons, fresh rosemary, farm fresh eggs, a little bit of melted butter, salt, sugar, and flour. All right, guys, so we're going to start out with that rosemary crust. And so the main thing here is that we want to get a little bit of that herbaceousness in every bite. So we're going to make sure and mince this rosemary really fine before we get started. So I'm going to start with about 2 to 3 good sprigs of rosemary. And if you haven't done this before, when you're taking rosemary apart, you can pinch the top end and you just kind of work your way down, and you'll actually kind of strip that whole stem right there, and then you end up with nothing else on it except the top part, and you just rip it right off. So we're going to pinch, if we tear these in half, we're going to pinch up top, and we'll just kind of grab some of these leaves. And we'll gradually start just pulling down, and we end up stripping all the rosemary right off. So that's the best way to get those leaves and get rid of that wooded stem. So if you're a really big rosemary fan, go heavier, go with the 3 sprigs. If it's not your thing, maybe go with the 2 sprigs. And if rosemary really isn't in your whole wheelhouse, you can also do this with thyme, and it also has kind of a really good herbaceous flavor that you can carry through against that lemon, and it's a solid dish. So we want to get this rosemary really finely chopped because no one wants a mouthful of rosemary, that's for sure. But just that hint of it's going to make it a lot more pop with your overall dish. So y'all, this shortbread tart is a very simple recipe, and that's what we're going to be putting this rosemary right into. But before I get started, when you're looking at different tart doughs, the main thing you want to focus on is just finding one that's going to balance out what you're working with. If you've got a really tart filling, we want to go with a little bit more salt and sugar on our tart dough. Or if you've got a less sweet filling, you're going to want something stronger in that tart dough to stand against it. So make sure that whatever tart dough you choose is that it balances the filling. So the first thing we want to go ahead and start off with is getting our butter, our sugar, and our vanilla into the bowl, mixed up, and then we'll incorporate that flour. So starting out with our butter, we've got 1 cup of melted butter. So this is going to be 2 sticks of melted butter. To that, we're going to add a 1/2 cup of sugar. All right. And y'all, with these measurements, everything in the kitchen, I mean, you do want to make sure you got level measurements. Baking, there's not a whole lot of room to go back. We're going to add the vanilla extract, and what's unique about vanilla extract, not normally a tart recipe ingredient, but it's going to add a little bit of extra flavor that balances out some of that rosemary. So we want to make sure we get, at least a tablespoon of a good vanilla in here. If you like Mexican vanilla, and I know a lot of people have that at home, Mexican vanilla is great with this recipe. All right. And to this, we're also going to add a pinch of salt, because salt is a #1 ingredient for every dessert we make here. A lot of people think salt's for savory, but salt is just a flavor enhancer, and you've got to have it in everything you make, and that especially includes things with sugar. So a good pinch there too. So once we've got all of our liquids mixed in here, we're going to take this and really just try and get it all incorporated. We don't have to have that sugar dissolved just yet, and it's not going to. We just want to make sure it's nice and incorporated, so when we add the flour, it's going to evenly distribute. So once we get our liquids mixed, we're going to start adding flour, and we're going to do that a 1/2 cup at a time. Pretty much what I'm trying to avoid here is too much clumping, where we're just getting a little bit of incorporation and then add some more. So 1/2 cup and stir. This also makes just a great regular shortbread recipe. So if you wanted to make some shortbread cookies out of a bigger batch, this will be a fantastic flavor to put in there. So you can see it's really going to thicken up, and this is a very, very thick batter. This is not going to be loose at all. It's going to be very firm. And that's what we want. It'll help us when we mold this into the bottom of that tart pan. Now, a lot of folks ask me about all the different types of flours out there too. And we really try to focus on recipes that we can use all-purpose for. The reason we use all-purpose is because it's got a good gluten ratio. And then our last scoop here, and I had a little bit of extra flour to that one, about an extra tablespoon. And that's, again, very, very thick batter we're making here. And I'm probably going to have to use my hands here. You can only stir so much until it's just like not going to incorporate anymore with this little paddle here. So, all right, to make it come together, we're going to take the rest of that off the scraper. And we're going to add that rosemary directly in. And again, y'all, if you think that, thyme would be more your speed, or maybe even an orange zest, like an orange or lemon zest straight into it, you're just adding more flavor that's going to come out after everything's done baking. So we'll start pinching and folding in. We want to make sure we get all this extra flour in there. And the reason that this is a little bit of a drier dough, one, it's shortbread, and that's how it's supposed to be. But two, is that we're going to be par cooking this, taking it out, and then adding more liquid on top. So we want to make sure that it's not a real wet batter, because if it's wet, it's going to pretty much become a big slime fest when it's all done. So we want to make sure it's nice and firm. Time to get this in the tart pan. So for this one, I'm using a 12-inch tart pan, And this is gonna make a nice 1/2-inch thick tart on the bottom where we can put the extra lemon filling on top of it. So we're gonna press, and we wanna fill this entire pan. We don't wanna miss an inch, and that's very important. Now, if you're doing this at home and you don't have a tart pan, you can do this in a Pyrex, but what I suggest for a Pyrex is lining the bottom with parchment, so when you're done, you can pull the parchment up and it'll actually pull the rest of the entire tart out with it. So we want to go around the edges, make sure we're nice and smoothed out. We don't want any uneven baking, so make sure all the way to the edge it's nice and even. And our tart's ready for the oven. So we're going to get that tart in the oven, bake it at 325 for about 20 minutes. And then it's going to have a nice firm top, not cooked all the way, that we can pour the rest of this lemon curd onto. So the main parts of this lemon curd are going to be the sugar, lemon juice, egg, and just a touch of flour to bring it all together. We're going to start with this lemon juice. And to that lemon juice, I'm going to add my 6 eggs. Now, I like to use some local farm fresh eggs, and I'll tell you why. The yolks are so much richer than what comes from the store. So we've got a buddy down the street at Sample Farms. He's got about 400 layers out there, and he brings us a lot of eggs over to the shop so we can make all of our cookie doughs and custards and cake batters. So once we've got our eggs and lemon juice ready to go, we're going to whisk them together. All right, we're all set. So to our wet mix, we're going to add some sugar, and that's about 2 cups going in. So just like last time, we want to add small amounts of dry to the wet at a time so it doesn't coagulate into one big mess. All right, so once we've got some in there, we're going to start stirring. Get the rest of those solids in there. And then back to round 2. All right, our next batch of sugar coming in. All right, so our first cup of sugar is in and incorporated. We're going to do something a little bit different on our next round because we've got to start adding some flour. So to our next 1/2 cup of sugar that we put in here, we're also going to add 3 tablespoons of flour. So we're going to get this flour and this sugar kind of sifting in together, and it's going to help incorporate a little bit of each. So the total amount of dry we're putting in here is 2 cups of sugar and 6 tablespoons of flour. We're going to start to see this thicken up some as we add that flour in there. All right, and last round. And back to sifting. We're almost there, I promise. It's important to sift anytime you're working with ingredients like flour, powdered sugar, going from dry into wet, because you don't want to end up with those big chunks that end up settling down in a lot of mixes. So this is definitely a batter that we want to be very smooth. All right, whisking that back together too. So now that we got everything mixed in here, we're gonna check on that tart in the oven, pull it out, place this on top, and back in it'll go for another 15 to 20. So what we're looking for is a little bit of browning on the edges where it's just starting to turn tan. So we want these edges to just be a little brown all the way around, which means it's set on the bottom. And we're gonna start poking some holes so we can get prepared for that lemon curd. So we're gonna take a fork and just kind of puncture some holes all the way around, because as this continues to cook, we want any steam to be able to escape easily and not bubble up and make big bubbles in the bottom of our tart. All right, y'all, and once we're done poking those holes, we're gonna move over and pour that lemon right on top of everything. And leave yourself a little bit of clearance there for when you're moving it around. And back in the oven it goes. So once we get the lemon in, guys, we're gonna rest this down in a pan to help support the bottom, and back into the oven it goes. So y'all, we're gonna let that lemon bake in there for about 25 minutes until it gets nice and firm on top. You want as little jiggle as possible. That's how you know it's set. And so we can take that out. We're gonna let it cool at room temp for about 2 hours. And then, my preference, throw it in the fridge for another hour or two, because this is a dish that I like best served cold. So y'all, we're gonna go powdered sugar right over the top of this whole thing. So we're gonna use our sifter and just start snowing down. I like to leave a little bit of the lemon exposed so you can still see what's underneath. All right, and then comes our garnish. So we're gonna garnish back with rosemary so folks know exactly what's going on in there. And then we're gonna put some of these blueberries just for a nice added effect. A little pop. In little groups like that. And there we go. We've got a rosemary tart with a nice lemon curd finished off with some blueberries and rosemary.